look at the facts of the economy, it is a booming economy.
I want to tell you what I mean when I say that I am going to kill Donald Trump.
Mr. President, why did you decide to shake up your leadership team in Minnesota and send Tom?
I do that all the time. I shake up teams. We just got a report done by Democrats that the country is the safest ever recorded.
About only a quarter of that money went to infrastructure. The rest of it went to take on very serious problems like racist roads and discriminatory trees and whatever else they can think of.
Good morning. It is 8:08 now on News Talk 1079. It's a Wednesday. We welcome you to the Neal Larson Show. And getting underway right now, chaired by our own U.S. Senator Jim Risch, is a hearing where we will hear from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, about Venezuela. I'm assuming we'll hear about the capture of Maduro. I'm assuming we'll hear about the new leadership and what the future of Venezuela may be and what the American posture will be towards Venezuela and what our approach will be.
Be prepared, I think, for questioning from Democrats on this, where they're going to try to grill Marco Rubio about the interception of the drug boats, potentially also the ship that was intercepted following the capture of Maduro. And then, of course, the mission itself in Maduro. Yeah. They're going to complain and they're going to protect the criminal because that's what they do. Yeah. So we have that. We don't have the audio yet of Secretary of State Rubio. Just right now, some opening statements from Senator Risch. But I just saw a headline, Julie. Governor J.B. Pritzker, who Donald Trump loves to tease. This is an example of what Marco Rubio talked about, where he said the left has lost their ever-loving minds. They're out of their minds right now. And J.B. Pritzker said that the presence of ICE may be worse than what COVID was. So very quickly, I went to my research team and I said, how many people died in Illinois from COVID? About 40,000 people. Illinois residents died from COVID since the pandemic began in early 2020. How can you even compare these two events and say the presence of ICE agents that are just there to find people who are here illegally, to process them and possibly deport them, to the death of 40,000 people? You can, because it's all about sowing fear, because that's what COVID was for these left-leaning states as well. Shut everybody in their houses, shut everything down, harm businesses, but push a vaccine where the pharmaceutical vaccine or a shot. Please do not text me and correct me. Vaccine or a shot that is going to benefit a bunch of government employees. It's all performative. Everything is so performative.
It is. It's they're cosplaying, and they're cosplaying outrage right now, and it is so unbelievable. You and I have trust issues, Julie. There's a video out of a man who approached Ilhan Omar at some public meeting, and as he's coming toward her, she leaves the podium with her hand back like she's going to punch him and approaches him. I saw the headline. I didn't bother watching the video last night. I've seen the video on loop this morning. I have to tell you, I'm skeptical that this was just a legitimate thing. And now there's another angle. Somebody took some pictures. There was a perfectly placed video camera behind Representative Omar to capture this and her reaction to it. And it has some of the fingerprints of a staged event.
I think you could easily interpret it as that. I think for me, the biggest part of this is, the camera angles and everything being perfectly set up. Sure, I'm with you on that. But maybe that just falls into place. But the man has a syringe with liquid in it. He squirts the syringe at her, and she goes after him and then immediately demands that they finish the press conference because no one's going to take me down. If you or I had liquid squirted on us,
I would not be finishing a press conference.
Well,
I don't know what's out there, and I don't know what you're harming me with.
Is it acid? Is it anthrax? What is it? I mean...
She doesn't even wipe it off.
Well, and there's already people there detaining the guy. She doesn't need...
to go after him with her fist raised.
Right. She'll take care of this herself. Like, it doesn't need to be like... By
the way, the woman is my size.
Yeah, she's little.
She's a little gal.
She's very small frame. And by the way, let's understand the full context of this. Ilhan Omar her net worth seems to grow by the millions every month. She came from Somalia with nothing. She's now worth over $40 million in the span of a very few short years as a sitting member of Congress, representing a district, by the way, that is rife with massive amounts of federal money fraud.
That includes the Somalian population.
Yes. So I would imagine that a distraction from this investigation and the public scrutiny of how in the world did you get so rich in such a short amount of time would be a welcome development for her. So we'll see. Is this the latest Jussie Smollett? Is this the latest staged event to try to garner sympathy, to try to make her look like some kind of a
victim,
a bad A, kind of? And I don't know. I'm not saying it's fake. I'm saying let's investigate and ask all the questions we need to ask.
I agree. Completely agree. Just as I'm saying that about the Alex Pretti situation.
Yeah.
Everybody who feels the need to make a conclusion within one picture or one video shot and 3 hours after the event happened, you're just making yourself look like a fool.
Yes.
So do I want an investigation into this guy? Sure. Do I have a lot of questions where almost immediately in other situations we have names and arrest records and everything? None of that's coming out with this Ilhan Omar thing. Nothing.
No.
All we've got is video. That makes me a little skeptical, but I will wait for an investigation. I'm also waiting for an investigation with Alex Pretti. I think these officers might be in a little bit of trouble, but we're going to wait and see. We're going to watch and see what happens. And all shootings, all of it should be investigated. You would want that if you were in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So don't be frustrated that investigations are called for.
So, question that I have, and this is unless I dreamt this last night, we found out that Alex Pretti had a previous interaction with ICE officers, got some broken ribs because he was getting up in their face, he was getting in their way, he was interfering with their investigation. And so did he have a motive after they roughed him up because he was getting in their way to return the next day without an ID and with a gun? I mean, you have to ask yourself these questions that I think again, it's not an accusation. It is a reason for questions where what was his motive to show up the next day carrying a 9mm after he had an interaction that left him injured with ICE earlier?
Yeah, I think you have to ask the questions. I think it needs to go into all of it. There's been a lot of reporting this morning that the federal government is now saying that 2 of the ICE agents deployed their weapons. So it wasn't just one ICE agent shooting, it was the other. Or it was both, excuse me.
Yep.
This is why you wait for the investigation. This is why we check all of the camera angles. This is why we shouldn't have made the conclusions we did about Renee Good before we saw the video from the officer who got hit with the car and ended up shooting her.
Yeah.
Do you see how quickly that quieted down? It quieted down after that video.
It did?
Yeah, because she is not, there's no way that that ICE officer is going to get charged. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, in this situation, as we start to get more and more videos, it's not looking as great for the federal agents, but the investigation needs to carry forward.
Well, look at what Trump did. Here, by the way, all of this, and don't get me wrong, it's a serious thing when American citizens get shot by federal agents.
Sure.
There has to be investigations of that. Let's pause this discussion. We're going to join Senator Rubio. Oh, they're hauling the protesters out right now. If you watch here,
did I say the word performative already?
Yeah, you did say performative. But that's already happening. Good thing is usually the riffraff present themselves early on in these proceedings.
Mm-hmm.
So let's listen in.
Witnesses that come before us. But anyway,
there'll be a couple more. So thank you for stopping the clock. But I appreciate it. So, and I know there's a lot of other topics you're going to ask me about, so we can talk about those, including the ones that Senator Shaheen just outlined. But let me just talk about Venezuela in particular.
Please.
I think we can talk, if you want. I'm sure your questions will be about what happened before and led up to in the operation. I want to focus my comments this morning on what happens now moving forward, because you're going to ask about the going back. And let me just say this. What is our goal going in? We had in our hemisphere a regime operated by an indicted narco-trafficker that became a base of operation for virtually every competitor, adversary, and enemy in the world. It was, for Iran, their primary spot of operation in the Western Hemisphere was Venezuela. For Russia, their primary base of operation in the Western Hemisphere, along Cuba and Nicaragua, was Venezuela. In the case of China, China was receiving oil at a huge, about $20 a barrel discount. And they weren't even paying money for it. It was being used to pay down debt that they were owed. This is the oil of the people of Venezuela, and it was being given to the Chinese as barter at a $20 discount per barrel in some cases. And so you had basically three of our primary opponents in the world operating from our hemisphere from that spot. It was also a place where you had a narco-trafficking regime that openly cooperated with the FARC and the ELN and other drug trafficking organizations using their national territory. It was an enormous strategic risk for the United States, not halfway around the world, not in another continent, but in the hemisphere in which we all live. And it was having dramatic impacts on us, but also on Colombia and on the Caribbean basin and all sorts of other places. It was an untenable situation, and it had to be addressed. And it was addressed. And now the question becomes what happens moving forward. As I've described to you in previous settings and in individual conversations, we had three objectives here. The final, I'll work it backwards, because the end state here is we want to reach a phase of transition where we are left with a friendly, stable, prosperous Venezuela, and democratic, in which all elements of society are represented in free and fair elections. By the way, you can have elections. You can have elections all day. But if the opposition has no access to the media, if opposition candidates are routinely dismissed and unable to be on the ballot because the government, those aren't free and fair elections. That's the end state that we want. Free, fair, prosperous, and friendly Venezuela. We're not going to get there in 3 weeks. It's going to take some time. And so objective number one was stability. In the aftermath of the removal of Maduro, the concern was what happens in Venezuela. Is there civil war? Do the different factions start going at each other? Are 1 million people crossing the border into Colombia? All of that has been avoided. And one of the primary ways that it has been avoided is the ability to establish direct, honest, respectful, but very direct and honest conversations with the people who today control the elements of that nation. Meaning the law enforcement, the government apparatus, etc. And one of the tools that's available to us is the fact that we have sanctions on oil. There is oil that is sanctioned that cannot move from Venezuela because of our quarantine. And so what we did is we entered into an arrangement with them. And the arrangement is this. On the oil that is sanctioned in quarantine, we will allow you to move it to market. We will allow you to move it to market at market prices, not at the discount China was getting. In return, the funds from that will be deposited into an account that we will have oversight over. And you will spend that money for the benefit of the Venezuelan people. Why was that important? Venezuela was running out of storage capacity. Okay? They were producing oil, they were drilling oil, they had nowhere to put it. They had nowhere to move it, and they were facing a fiscal crunch. They needed money in the immediacy to fund the police officer, the sanitation workers, the daily operations of government. And so we've been able to create a short-term mechanism. This is not going to be the permanent mechanism, but this is a short-term mechanism in which the needs of the Venezuelan people can be met through a process that we've created where they will submit every month a budget of this is what we need funded. We will provide for them at the front end what that money cannot be used for. And they've been very cooperative in this regard. In fact, they have pledged to use a substantial amount of those funds to purchase medicine and equipment directly from the United States. As in fact, one of the things they need is dilutin, depending how you want to pronounce it. And that basically is the light crude that you need to mix with their heavy crude in order for the oil to be able to be mixed and moved. They used to get 100% of that from Russia. They are now getting 100% of that from the United States. So we're using that short-term mechanism both to stabilize the country, but also to make sure that the oil proceeds that are currently being generated through the licenses we'll now begin to issue on the sanctioned oil goes to the benefit of the Venezuelan people, not to fund the system that existed in the past. The second is a period of recovery. And that is the phase in which you want to see a normalized oil industry. Again, look, we've got plenty of oil. There's plenty of oil all over the world. Canada produces heavy crude, so it's not like Venezuela's oil is unique in that regard, despite the fact they have the largest known reserves in the world. It's not irreplaceable. But we understand that that is the lifeline. Their natural resources are going to allow Venezuela to be stable and prosperous moving forward. And so we've created what we hope to do is transition to a mechanism that allows that to be sold in a normal way, a normal oil industry, not one dominated by cronies, not one dominated by graft and corruption. To that end, the authorities there deserve some credit. They have passed a new hydrocarbon law that basically eradicates many of the Chavez-era restrictions on private investment in the oil industry. It probably doesn't go far enough to attract sufficient investment, but it's a big step from where they were 3 weeks ago. So that's a major change. We can address some of the other components, but I'll run out of time. But one of the parts of the transition phase, or the recovery phase, is beginning to create space for different voices inside of Venezuelan politics to have an ability to speak out. Part of that is the release of political prisoners. By some estimates, up to 2,000. They are releasing them. They are releasing them probably slower than I would like them to, but they are releasing them. And in fact, you're starting to see some of the people being released beginning to speak out and participate in political life in the country. We have a long ways to go. Look, we can talk in more detail about all of these things. Suffice it to say, I'm not here to claim to you this is going to be easy or simple. I am saying that in 3.5, almost 4 weeks, we are much further along on this project than we thought we would be, given the complexities of it going into it. And I recognize that it won't be easy. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we are dealing with people over there that have spent most of their lives living in a gangster paradise. So it's not going to be like from one day to the next, we're going to have this thing turn around overnight. But I think we're making good and decent progress. It is the best plan, and we are certainly better off today in Venezuela than we were 4 weeks ago. And I think and hope and expect that we'll be better off in 3 months, and 6 months, and 9 months than we would have been had Maduro still been there. So thank you.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey, it's Brad from Now 105.1 and QP99. I'm in the studio here. I love our studios, by the way. Ranger Rick back there. There's Neal and Julie doing their thing. Hey, when you want to advertise on the radio, what do? You call the radio station, right? But what do you do when you want to advertise on Facebook and Instagram and Hulu and Disney Plus and Peacock and the other TV streaming services? You can kind of click around on them and make guesses or read books or take courses online on how to do that advertising. Or you could call us at the radio station. At Sandhill Media, we take care of your local radio and digital marketing. So reach out to us at sandhillmediagroup.com and we'll make sure that your message gets heard and seen wherever your customers are.
Well, thank you, Secretary Rubio. We'll now do a round of questions, 5 minutes each. I'd like to start, and I'd ask you to go. I understand we're not in a classified setting, but I think a lot of people had no understanding of the groundwork that was done before the actual action took place. I was incredibly impressed with what you told me about how you, the president, negotiated with parties there on the ground, particularly the parties who were going to be in charge after Maduro was removed. And I wonder if you could talk about that for a minute, understanding that we aren't in a classified setting. And I'd like to, if you could, say a few things about it.
Well, one of the things I've come to maybe more fully appreciate than I didn't when I was here in the Senate was the number of contingencies that the Department of War plans for all over the world. The overwhelming vast majority of them will never come to fruition. But there's all kinds of contingencies that are planned for. And one contingency that had to be planned for is the fact that sitting in Venezuela with a $50 million reward on his head was an indicted narco-trafficker. In fact, I believe it's the largest reward we've ever issued for anybody. I'd remind everybody the Biden administration had a $25 million reward on an indicted narco-trafficker, the same person. And so, multiple administrations from both parties have wanted this man arrested. And one of the options the president had before him was the opportunity, if things didn't work out, to go in and remove this individual because he was wanted in a law enforcement operation. Now, obviously, a law enforcement operation against the de facto head of a regime is not as simple as going after some fugitive hiding in a closet somewhere. It required planning, and it required eliminating anything that was a threat to the forces that were going in to extract him. I want to be clear, and I'll share with you what I've shared publicly. We made multiple attempts to get Maduro to leave voluntarily and to avoid all of this because we understood that he was an impediment to progress. You couldn't make a deal with this guy. Okay? This guy has made multiple deals. He's broken every one of them. As a point of example, he made a deal with the Biden administration, and here was the deal that he made. It was a bad deal. We knew he wouldn't keep it. He made the following deal. Pardon my nephews, his nephews, who were convicted narco-traffickers, convicted already and serving time in jail. Pardon them. Pardon and release Alex Saab, who was his money man, his bag man, primarily in charge of the portfolio with Iran. Release these people. He, in turn, agreed to release some political prisoners, which he did. Many of them were subsequently exiled or rearrested, and that he would hold free and fair elections, which he did not. In fact, he basically disqualified Maria Corina Machado and any other candidate. And Edmundo Gonzalez ends up being the nominee for the opposition party simply because they forgot to ban him. And they forgot to put him on the ban list. And then despite that, he loses an election that everyone around the world recognizes an illegitimate election. So he's made previous deals. In fact, he's broken so many deals, not even the Vatican has been willing to interact with Maduro in the past because he's broken so many of these deals. He's just simply not a guy you can make a deal with. He had no intent of keeping it. What he wanted to do was tap us along and buy 3 years of time until he could deal with a new administration that he thought may be more favorable, et cetera. He was an impediment to progress. None of the things we're talking about now, not the release of political prisoners, not the transition of the oil industry to a legitimate oil industry, not the erosion of Iranian, Russian, or Chinese influence. None of these things would have been possible as long as Maduro was there. And so this was one option that was available to the president after exhausting every other option to remove this individual from the scene. Again, I'm not here to tell you these are all going to be roses along the way and it's all going to go perfectly. But for the first time in 20 years, we are having serious counter-narcotic talks with Venezuelan authorities about going after narcotics organizations. For the first time in 20 years, we are having serious conversations about eroding and eliminating the Iranian presence, the Chinese influence, the Russian presence as well. In fact, I would tell you that there are many elements there in Venezuela that welcome a return to establishing relations to the United States on multiple fronts. We are at the end talking about a Western country that has a long history of cooperation and work with the United States. At one time, Venezuela, pre-Chavez, was a very strong U.S. ally. And we hope to get back to that point. We're not there. This thing still is in its infancy. But I certainly think a lot of progress has been made in that regard.
All right. You're listening to live coverage. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in a hearing, and I believe it's the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Senate side. Senator Risch is chairing that and giving some insight on capture of Maduro, the future of Venezuela, and other pretty interesting stuff, Julie.
His opening remarks, he's quoting Coolio, Gangster's Paradise.
That's true, yeah.
Marco Rubio is great. He's getting a lot of information out quickly. What I'm taking from his comments is he's messaging from the Trump administration. This was about safety and security for the United States of America and also for the people of Venezuela.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have a problem with that.
Well, and I don't think people had a general understanding of how much Iran, China, Russia were all using Venezuela as an operations base for their anti-American agenda as well. So, hey, let's talk for a moment. Today's a big day, Julie. The advanced window products, they're having their blitz today. So
great.
What that means is if you call today, you're going to save big, much bigger. You always save big, but you're going to save even bigger when you call today. And just get the process rolling. You'll lock in the savings. It's $3,000 off, 10 windows or more. And these just aren't ordinary average windows. They're top-rated replacement windows because they build them, they install them, they use the highest quality glass, and they guarantee them for life.
All right. We've had these guys, Todd and Scott, in several times now. I have nothing more to say than they're good dudes, you guys. They're going to take care of you. If you're in the market for new windows, you're not going to get better customer service than you're going to receive from these two gentlemen. They're going to follow you from beginning to end. And if you've even been considering it, today's the day to do it.
Yeah, it is a good day. Just get it locked in. Even if it doesn't pan out, there's no reason not to call, because you can lock in the savings by calling 208-852-8685. That's 208-852-8685. $3,000 off, 10 windows or more from Advanced Window Products. And yes, financing is available. And yes, they do offer a lifetime guarantee, even for knucklehead breakage and problems with their windows. That's 208-852-8685. Quick break. We'll come back and continue. By the way, coming up in a little over half an hour, Congressman Mike Simpson will be in studio with us this morning. And there's a lot happening with Congress, even though the House is in recess. And we'll have a great chat with him in the next hour, right here on News Talk 107.9. 8:36 this year. Club Apple is celebrating something big. 40 years of building healthier lives in Southeast Idaho. That's right. For 4 decades, they've been a place where neighbors become friends and your goals can turn into lifelong habits, and your health just becomes an expectation, a way of life, and not just a temporary resolution. So to celebrate their 40th anniversary, they're making it easier than ever to start the new year the right way. And for a limited time, you can join Club Apple for just $40 down for their 40-year celebration and defer your payments for a bit and save big on $40 down, plus an entire month to build momentum before your first payment ever hits. Club Apple, not just a gym, it's a full health club experience. They have pools. They have hundreds of monthly group fitness classes, things like yoga and pickleball and Pilates. They also have personal training if you need that. They have steam rooms. They are a welcoming community that shows up for you every day. And if this is the year that you've finally committed to your health and your energy and your confidence, this right now is your moment. I'm going to give you their number here in just a moment. But Club Apple invites you to celebrate 40 years with them. You can go online to theclubapple.com. You'll see all of the things, the amenities, the classes, the training, all the things that they have to offer. And you can give them a call. They'd love to give you a free tour just so you can look around. 208-529-8600. That's 208-529-8600. The Club Apple. So, Julie, we have Congressman Simpson in a half an hour.
Few short minutes. We'll be chatting with him about several things. Of course, he gave a full-throated endorsement of ICE, so we'll get his opinion on what's happening in Minneapolis and in other areas around the nation. He also has been part of securing some funding for a couple of things. A little over $6 million for a new school on the Mountain Home Air Force Base, and then also he secured funding to repair US 30. That's the highway near Soda Springs. So working to help Idaho, we'll touch base with him on those things, and we'll see how Washington's going, if he's enjoying his week off.
Okay. I think they come home and they work. So
yeah.
As though it's work to come into our radio studio and talk to us. But
this is probably one of the easier things that he does in the whole gamut of things.
That's true. All right, 8:39. We'll be back after this on News Talk 107.9. It's 8:46 now. News Talk 107.9. Neal Larson and Julie Mason. And if you have questions for Congressman Simpson, send them to us via text 208-542-1079. And let's go to the phones. We've had a caller standing by through the commercial break. Caller, go ahead. What's on your mind today?
Hey, good morning, you two. How are you?
Good, doing well.
Good. Hey, so first off, calling about the Alex, an officer shooting. So first off, just appreciate your sentiment, you and Julie. Just knowledge is power. Just wait, let stuff come out, let more angles come out. So I really appreciate that, and that's what I ended up doing. I just waited, got more information, and I think I'm settled on. This seems like a classic example of not justified, but reasonable. Meaning, was it justified? No, he was working off of the incorrect information. But is it reasonable? and this is the test that every individual that looks at this story needs to ask themselves, would I have done the same thing under the same circumstances and with a little bit more depth of knowledge if someone yelled out, "I've got his gun"? Is it reasonable somebody could have heard, "He's got a gun"?
Yeah, sure.
I think this fits under the reasonable test. And it's unfortunate. It shouldn't have happened. But this is actually very comparable to, hey, why did you shoot this guy? Well, he broke my door down, came into my room at 1 a.m. Okay, well, he was your neighbor, and he was just a little drunk, and he just thought it was his house. So he thought he was just breaking into his own house. This is that type of scenario where it shouldn't have happened. It wasn't justified, but under the reasonable test, it's actually pretty close, those two situations. So for anybody that is thinking about it and thinking it's not justified, you're right. But ask yourself, would you have done the same thing? "I've got his gun."
Yeah.
Versus thinking you heard, "He's got a gun." So,
well, and I also think, I mean, we're still learning about this. I mentioned the report earlier this morning. Apparently, he recently had another interaction that got physical with ICE agents, had some broken or bruised ribs. And that's a different context when he shows up after that carrying a gun and no ID, apparently, if that detail happens to be true. And I'm not saying he had a motive or an intent to do harm, but if he had already interfered with them, you do have to ask, why was he showing back up armed and no ID? I mean, I all these questions just need to be asked, and we do need to get to the truth before we reach any permanent conclusion here.
Yeah, agreed. The reasonable test, really important to do. So. Yeah. Anyway, thanks, guys.
Great point. I appreciate that. There is, I like that distinction between justified and reasonable, because they're related, but they're not the same thing. They're not identical.
The thing that I hope that we can walk away with this, and I'm not saying we won't universally, because I know we can't, but for the most part, for our listeners, that they can have a conversation with somebody and help them learn and understand that two truths can be in this same situation, and they can kind of conflict, those truths.
Yeah.
We can look at this shooting and go, yeah, it kind of sucks. But we can also look at the shooting and go, but I probably would have done exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Those two truths can exist at the same time.
In that moment, given the information they had and what they knew and the very volatile dynamics of that moment, you can absolutely see that happening again, even though you'd love to go back and do what you could to avoid it.
Right. I also would hope that somewhere along the way, we can again learn what protesting means. Protesting has shifted. People believe that a protest is actually causing chaos, discontent, standing in the way, or impeding law enforcement. That is not not the right that you've been given.
Yeah.
That is not what protesting is. Your right is to stand in front of a building with a placard, and you can scream, you can yell, you can say what you want to about whatever situation you're protesting. You cannot impede and you cannot cause chaos. You are now breaking the law.
Yeah. You exactly. But yet they do put it all under this protest umbrella. And they even add modifiers to it, like mostly peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you might as well just say partially violent then.
Yeah, they're the same thing.
If you say mostly peaceful, you're contending that, or you're admitting that it's also partially not peaceful. It's partially violent. And that isn't protected. Violence is not a first. I mean, you can't trespass. That's not a First Amendment right. You can't threaten physically. You can't assault someone or threateningly accost someone. Those are not protected, but yet the left says your right to protest, and then here's all the activities we include under the umbrella of protest, and 3/4 of them are illegal.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that.
You can't. For me, you, and a good share of Americans, this is common sense. You shouldn't be able to stand in the middle of the road and cause a problem. But there is 20% of the left that believes that's exactly what your rights are. And we need to reframe that. And part of the problem is that we've allowed these kind of protests to happen before Minneapolis.
Yeah.
We've allowed 100 or so people to shut down the roads to airports because they're standing in the middle of the road, and we let it happen. And good everyday Americans missed their flights to important things because somebody wanted to stand in the middle of the road, and we didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
We've got to put a stop to that kind of behavior so it doesn't accelerate to the behavior that we're seeing in Minneapolis.
Julie, my mind went straight to the discombobulator when you talked about those scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I'm serious. You're standing in the roadway, you're going to get the discombobulator on you.
We're going to freak you out for 24 hours and you can go home.
Your ears are going to bleed and you're going to barf, but you're going to get out of the way. You won't die, though.
We'll make sure you don't die.
You will recover, but I look at they don't. But yet you have an entire political party and an entire media system that is just applauding and cheering these people on, and basically giving them cultural permission to go and do those things. That's what's got to stop. And you right now, it's Minneapolis. In other times, it's been other big cities, but right now, the hotbed and ground zero of America's discontent is in Minneapolis. But it is fueled by the policies of Tim Walz and Jacob Frey, and Fry, however you say his name. That they are deliberately making this worse. And if they would just simply cooperate with ICE, turn over the people, the criminals, the people who are causing mayhem anyway in their communities, none of this would be happening. They are the reason this is happening.
I have said dozens of times, Minneapolis is a wonky state.
It is a wonky state.
They've got stuff going on there that you're not experiencing in 45 of the other states in the nation.
Yeah.
And so if you are going to create chaos, and this is an organized effort, what better place could they choose?
Oh, yeah.
When I say it's performative, it is performative. They found the most fertile ground. They are creating the chaos, and it is on purpose.
It is. It feels very, very deliberate, especially when you see these stories that Trump had a phone call with Governor Walz, and they communicated with the mayor, and sometimes within minutes or a few short hours, they are out publicly saying, we won't cooperate with ICE. They're not good faith. They're not there in good faith. We're going to take a break. It's 8:55 on News Talk 107.9.
And discriminatory trees and whatever else they can think of. And so, look, I'm sorry. I hate to say this about my fellow Americans. These people are out of their minds, and they cannot be allowed to be near power.
Once again, 8:58 on News Talk 107.9. Looking forward to chatting with Congressman Mike Simpson in studio in the next hour. He's also brought Zak Miller from the Idaho Farm Bureau with him as well. So we're going to talk water. We're going to talk about immigration reform. And if you have any questions, text them into us at 208-542-1079. We'll be back after the news. And welcome back. Hour 2 underway on this Wednesday on News Talk 107.9. Neal Larson along with Julie Mason. And we got a full studio this morning, Julie. Congressman Mike Simpson joining us. He's actually in district right now because the House got their work done, but that problem child on the other end of the Capitol, they still are, well, they're dealing with Chuck Schumer. So they're a complicated bunch over there.
Yes, they are.
So, but you're here at home for a while at least. For a week. Okay. Work period for you. We're also excited to have Zak Miller. He's the CEO of the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation in studio with us because a couple of really big issues, water and immigration, something that both of you work on and can inform us on. So, Zak, we welcome you to the studio as well today.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
All right. Well, let's start with the threat of a shutdown. It's looming here at the end of the week. Friday, I believe, is the deadline.
Yep.
About an hour and a half ago, we talked with Senator Crapo, and they're working hard to try to get these last budgets passed, but the whole ICE situation in Minnesota is complicating their efforts. And Chuck Schumer is promising some retribution, which means that's an increased likelihood of a shutdown. So we'd love your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. The problem is, not the problem, the reality is we passed all 12 of the conference reports over to the Senate. 6 of them have been signed into law. In fact, I was at the White House Friday when the president signed my bill, the Interior bill, the Energy and Water bill. So for the INL, they've got their appropriation for next year and that kind of stuff, which is important to us. And the other one was Commerce, Justice, Science that he signed last Friday. That leaves 6 to be done, but that's 70% of the total discretionary budget because half of the discretionary budget is defense. What's interesting over in the Senate, and a lot of people don't understand this, but ICE has actually been funded through 2029. So shutting it down, trying to defund ICE won't work. ICE will still be funded. What they will be doing if they shut down the government is taking away funding for FEMA in the middle of snowstorms across this country and disasters that have got to be taken care of. For TSA, they will be denying the military the pay raise, medical research, and other things. They'll be defunding all those things. But the one thing they're after, ICE, will still be funded through 2029. So it's, I don't know, it's crazy what they're trying, but their base is kind of demanding it.
Okay, so that raises a little suspicion for me, Congressman, that if it wasn't ICE, they were going to find some reason.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah,
it's
it is
a tactic they love to employ.
It is fair, but I do think that had they not found ICE, there probably would have been enough senators to get it passed. You know, a majority of them would have voted against the conference reports. I understand that. But they were these conference reports, you got to remember, are negotiated between the House and the Senate and between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans can look at those bills and say, I don't know that I ought to put all of that money in that program or whatever, but it was important to someone else. Maybe it was the Senate or maybe it was the Democrats or whatever. All of these bills lean toward Republican spending. And what they do is they actually decrease spending. In our Interior bill, we actually, out of $36 billion, we reduced spending by $1.9 billion, which is, a decrease from last year. Some people thought it should have been more. Some people thought we should have increased spending. But we reduced spending. And all of these bills together reduce spending from what it was last year. And instead of doing a continuing resolution, which is what you do if you can't pass the appropriation bills, this would have been, I think, the 4th year of the last Biden administration's budget. So we're now on a Republican budget headed in the right direction. And I'm kind of surprised some of these got conferenced. I didn't think Labor H, with the allocation that they were given, because that's a big budget. That's about $180 billion. I didn't think we'd be able to conference that with the Senate, but we did. And I think Chairman Adderholt and Chairman Cole did a fantastic job of that. Defense always needs more money and stuff, and we got Ken Calvert to get that one done. Homeland Security is the tough one.
Yeah. One of the things, I know Julie has questions here, but I wanted to ask a really quick, relevant follow-up, I think. And, of course, Trump, who is this efficient CEO, he loves to get things done. He's long been an advocate of getting rid of the filibuster over on the Senate side. And there's even some chatter among a few of the senators. But that's a Pandora's box, because once you get rid of it, you won't have access to it down the road. The Democrats it'll be a bygone tradition.
Yep.
Your thoughts on it, though. Is there a threshold where the stakes are high enough that the Republicans probably should consider maybe getting rid of the filibuster on some issues?
What I've thought about, they did that for confirmations of judges and a few things like that, which Harry Reid started actually getting rid of the filibuster. And when I first came to Congress, I thought, why in the heck do they have a filibuster over there? And then I realized the logic behind it, why they did it. It used to be a 2/3 majority. You used to have 67 votes to move forward. And then they lowered it to 60. I think there are some issues like appropriation bills that you ought to be able to pass with just a majority. That would make sense to me. Policy issues, things like that, if you're enacting another Obamacare or something like that, that ought to require a 2/3 majority or a 60-vote majority to clear the hurdle. So I would lower it for some things, but I'd be very specific. But you're absolutely right. Once you do that, you got to remember that it's going to come back to bite you at some point in time. And I can tell you, when the Democrats had control of both the House and the Senate and the White House under Obama, there were some things that were passed by the House that were saved by the Republicans in the Senate having the filibuster. So you got to look down the road. It would be easy to repeal it altogether right now, and then you could do whatever you want theoretically. I don't think that'd be good in the long run.
Cuts both ways.
Yeah, it does.
You had a big day a couple of days ago. You were in the White House signing a bill with President Trump. Why don't you tell us about that bill?
It was the Interior Bill, which funds the Forest Service, the BLM, all the land management agencies, the Park Service, Indian Affairs, the Smithsonian, the EPA, other things. It's about a $36 billion bill. Like I say, we reduced spending by $1.9 billion in it. Trump endorsed the bill, as he did all of the appropriations that are now over in the Senate. And it was exciting to go down to the White House with Chairman Cole and Chairman Fleshman, chairman of the Energy and Water Appropriations Committee, and sign those bills. The Energy and Water bill, obviously, is very important to the INL. That's where they get most of their funding, or a lot of their funding. And to know what their budget is going to be is important. It would be hard to manage an organization not knowing exactly what you're going to have in the way of a budget. And so these were important bills, but it was exciting to go down to the White House and do that.
Yeah. All right. We're talking with Congressman Mike Simpson. Back on ICE for just a moment. You recently, within the last, few days, you proactively, vocally threw your support behind ICE through all of this. And I mean, a lot of people look at Congressman Simpson and, you're a rhino, you're a Democrat, but this was an issue that you felt was important, and you did become vocal about it.
I think it's important that we stand behind our law enforcement officers, and ICE are law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
What's happening you got to remember what's happening in Minnesota. Nobody wanted to see two people get killed.
Yeah.
Those are tragedies. Shouldn't have happened. It should tell you that you don't aim your car at an officer of any officer and try to run over him. Was the response adequate, or is the response appropriate? That's something the investigation will look at. And also the other thing is under investigation now, the other killing, and we'll see what that shows. But this is all happening because Minneapolis is a sanctuary city. If you're a criminal and you came across the border during the invasion, during Biden administration, when 20 million people came across the border, and you're a criminal, where are you going to go? If it's me, I'm going to go to a sanctuary state or a sanctuary city where they won't cooperate with the federal government. And what's happening now, if you watch the pictures in Minnesota, the one thing you won't see is you won't see Minneapolis police officers helping ICE control the crowd. That's all they ask for. ICE is not crowd control. That's not their job. Their job is to pick up wanted criminals that have a criminal record, the worst of the worst, the people that have raped children and murdered people and all that kind of stuff. And I could show you the list of people that they've apprehended, and it's atrocious what they've done. And these people are protesting ICE and defending these criminals. I frankly, I don't understand it. Now, if it wasn't a sanctuary city, the mayor and governor would be having the local police force help crowd control with that. But no, they've left that to ICE, and we're not going to have anything to do with it, and that's a disaster, I think.
Well, it leads to an escalation of things that can lead to some of the violence that we've seen.
And all the rhetoric that they put out. You know, Marty Trillhouse, you remember Marty Trillhouse that used to write here, and now he's up in Lewiston. He wrote an article kind of criticizing, well, not kind of, really criticizing me because of the article that I wrote. And if you know where he's coming from when in the last paragraph he said, these ill-trained, masked, heavily armed goons. That's what he called the ICE people.
Wow.
And if that's your attitude, you know where you come from. So do they need to reevaluate how they're doing this? Yeah. And I think that's what they're doing right now. Tom Homan's a great guy. I think he's going to calm the situation down, but everybody needs to calm down on this. And I just don't understand how they're 75% of the people that ICE picks up have got the criminal record. They are the worst of the worst. And there are 25% who are probably not the worst of the worst, but they're here illegally.
Yeah.
The reason those 25% get picked up is because when you go pick up the guy that is the bad guy, there's usually 2 or 3 other people around him, and you ask them for their papers and they're here illegally. What do? Just turn them loose? You can't.
Yeah.
So that's where those other 25% come from. They don't go out and try to just pick up somebody that is here illegally. What they try to do is go out and get the worst of the worst.
Right. It's interesting, the talking points that have come out. You mentioned Marty Trillhouse saying ill-trained. That's been a new one. That surfaced about 3 or 4 days ago, 5 days ago. That's spread throughout. Prior to that, there was 3 or 4 days there where they were trying to claim that ICE is not even law enforcement.
Yeah.
They're a pretend agency. The talking points do spread throughout the Democrat circles, and they just throw them out there seeing which one will hit.
Yep.
Ill-trained could be turned or flipped on them very easily because the Minnesota law enforcement is not helping.
That's
so
right.
We could say they're ill-trained. They're not doing their jobs. They haven't been trained appropriately to step in where they're supposed to step in.
Can I also add, both Tim Walz and Mayor Fry, I'm assuming Mayor Fry, both took an oath to uphold the law.
Yeah.
And the Constitution. But now they're proactively saying we're going to ignore the nation's immigration laws.
Yeah.
How is this not a violation of the oaths that they've taken?
I think it is. I don't know Mayor Fry, just what I've seen on TV of him. I know Tim Walz. He served 10 years in Congress with me.
I am so sorry.
Yeah, you're so sorry too.
Yeah.
I was surprised when he got elected governor of Minnesota. And I was shocked when he got selected as the vice presidential candidate. One of my good friends, who is a Democrat, is a normal Democrat, when he got nominated to be the vice presidential candidate, I texted her and said, Tim Walz, with a question mark, and her only response was, he likes dogs. I mean,
she found one good attribute.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, does he have compromising pictures of somebody important?
I don't know.
How did he get there?
I don't know, but it is. I don't like to say bad things about him, but he's not the governor I'd want.
Gotcha. Well, we'll leave it at that. So, all right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, let's shift into water and immigration. We'll bring Zak Miller from the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation into this conversation as well. Just minutes away. It's 9:21 on News Talk 107.9. 9:24 News Talk 107.9 on a Wednesday morning. Excited to have Congressman Mike Simpson in studio with us while he's home for the work period. Also, Julie, we have some thank yous to give. They came bringing Charlie Kirk Freedom baseball caps for us today.
That's
so
great gift.
I already put mine on.
Yeah.
So,
Facebook Live, you can
anyway.
see Neal wearing his Freedom hat.
Thank you, by the way, for the kind gesture. So, Zak Miller, how are you today?
Doing great.
Well, good. You're here representing the Farm Bureau and, by extension, a lot of kind of worried farmers right now as we look at the snow totals and the moisture that we're seeing.
Oh, absolutely. It's always great to be a farmer in Idaho. 2026 isn't looking great. Prices are awful. Snowpack's weak.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to be worried about. But luckily, we're in Idaho. After we just talked about Minnesota, at least we're in Idaho.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I guess I'm going to kind of turn the conversation over to you two because you both work on two big issues: immigration and water as well. Water obviously has been a contentious issue in Idaho, especially the last 2 or 3 years. Tell us about the progress that you're making on these issues.
Well, let me say on the water issue, there's not a lot I can do about that. I don't have that power that comes from higher up. But it's I'm fearful that if we don't get a really good February and March, actually, with a lot of snow, we're going to have some real water problems come this summer. And as you know, last year we had some conflicts between the Mid Snake and the Upper Snake and water rights and that kind of stuff. I think it's going to exacerbate that problem. I hope not, because I've always said there's no problem in Idaho that a really good water year can't solve. And this doesn't look like it's being a really good water year. But I know the Farm Bureau, and earlier this year we went on a tour of the old Teton Dam site and other places talking about increasing storage capacity in Idaho. Why don't you tell us about what's going on with that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Congressman. So Senator Cook's been leading the charge with a couple up there, Eastern Idaho legislators, and Farm Bureaus, but that's been an easy one for us to jump on board with. And the concept is, on a year like this, we might get a lot of water in a hurry, and hopefully we do, since we haven't gotten it early, but we need it, and when it comes, we need to be able to hold on to it. It either needs to stay up high in the reservoir system, or we need to get in the aquifer, because we know those are the two to alleviate those fights. Because with water, it's never really it's a cessation of fighting. It's never an end of a battle.
Yeah, right.
And so we got to give a shout out to the state legislator, Senator Burtonshaw specifically last year made sure that we got the $30 million ongoing funding for water infrastructure. And, that sounds really good on a wet year, and it becomes very precedent on a dry year. So as Congressman said, he's supportive. We're looking at things. We had a great trip this fall back to D.C. and saw all the delegation with a bunch of farmers and a bunch of legislators. And so the word is going, there's no quick fix to this. There's no one thing that can happen. But drips and drabs and small things.
Yeah.
How do we get that done? And there's a lot smarter people than me. They send me to talk. There's smarter people behind me that actually do the policy work.
Yeah.
But you're right, Neal. Every time you talk farming in Idaho, it's always where's the water, how's the water, who's got the best water.
Yeah.
What are some of the long-term solutions that we could potentially put in place to ease a less than stellar water year that you're looking at?
So the biggest challenge we have is when we get the water, it all comes at once, and it all goes to the ocean. Once it gets past Miller Dam and Twin Falls, we can never recoup it. So we've, on even a normal year, but on our really good years, we have the water, but we can't hold it. And that's why we're talking, we need more storage. We need that canal that goes into nowhere out in the desert so that we can sink that water in the aquifer. We've just got to use it for a beneficial use, whether it's the aquifer or additional storage. And really the answer, as it always is follow the money. Where is you going to get the biggest bank for the lowest cost?
Yeah.
And cloud seeding comes into that as well. How do we generate the most water that we can retain? Because our other reservoir is our mountain system. It's that snowpack. Mother Nature seems to be the water master on that, and she doesn't necessarily talk to all of us.
She doesn't
on that.
negotiate.
Yeah,
No, she knows what she wants, and we take what we get.
She never does what I ask her for. So, yeah.
So, well, the other thing that's really important in this is Zach was mentioning is sending that water out to to nowhere on the desert and stuff, and recharging our aquifer. We have one of the great aquifers in the country. And it's going down because we've been pumping out of it for years. And we need to recharge that and get it back up to a level. And we've been doing some work in Congress to give them the resources to do that and also the authority to use these canals for recharge. Because oftentimes Army Corps of Engineer canals can only be used for Army Corps projects and stuff. So we have to have authority in that. So we're working with the state in doing that and working. And when they look at additional storage, I'm not the water expert. These guys are, and the state legislature. It'll be the state legislature that makes that decision. And when they make that decision, I'm more than happy to support them with whatever resources that we can find to do it.
So that kind of perfect lead into my question, because you talked about Senator Burtonshaw getting the $30 million ongoing for like these recharge sites that we're seeing, which is great. I think everybody, at least on this side of the state, is in support of this largely. But when you start talking about rebuilding the Teton Dam, I mean, that kind of infrastructure has to be the Bureau of Reclamation or the Army Corps of Engineers. That's a federal level project. But you're saying, Congressman, the state has to get to a certain point before that process begins.
They have to make a determination of where they want to be, And when we were up there, we talked about, do you rebuild a Teton Dam here or do you look at another location or something like that? That's a decision the people of Southeast Idaho and the state legislature is going to make. Isn't that your impression, Zach?
Absolutely, and the Congressman says it well, because there's two ways to get more water. We've got to get through the red tape of regulation, because the cost of just studying the Teton Dam site is in the billions. So how do we get that cost down so we can actually do real study without all the red tape, and then find out where a molecule of water is going to land somewhere in the basin of Idaho? How do we get the best value out of it at the lowest cost? And that's where the engineers, the people smarter than. Well, I'm sitting next to the Congressman. That's where people other than us are going to actually tell us what to do, and we're going to try and support. Because at the end of the day, a potato plant, a wheat plant, they just want a drop of water. They don't care where it came from, what it cost. Our job is to make it efficient.
Yeah. That's the real challenge, and oftentimes you don't see it until it's a bad water year, And I don't know what the water situation is in the mountains right now. What the snowpack is up there, I doubt it's very good.
It's below average. It's not as bad as it sounds. We got all that rain, but it's We need to store it, though. Can we store it if we get another set of warm weather?
Well, and you look at the forecast, it's a lot of sunshine and maybe a few clouds, not a lot of water in the near future. But
I think for us non-farmers, Zach, we are on the outside, looking in at this problem. We saw a lot of confrontation between the farmers in East Idaho, then the farmers in like the Twin Falls area and everything. Are we going to be able to move past that speed bump to get to these places of solution?
I think I'm an optimist by nature, but when you don't have the water and you look at land values in farming, if you have water to it, it's in 5 figures of an acre of land. If you don't have water, it's in 3 figures of value. So we all come together, and everyone's logical. You watch these farmers in a room, and logic is not in short supply. They get it, they understand it, and I've never met a farmer that really wants to harm their neighbor. But when your livelihood is starting to literally dry up, things get tough again. So we have to be proactive in the good years and even more proactive in the bad years to alleviate that terrible option. We don't want to see it. As Farm Bureau, we represent every side. So we kind of just we're the ones on the sidelines cheerleading, say, do good things for everybody and make everybody happy. And then we get told what we did wrong on the other side. But that's really... Julie, that's a great question. It's a hard answer to give.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you got to remember, in Idaho we go by what's called prior appropriation doctrine, and that is those people that have the earliest water rights have the right to that water, and if there's not enough of that water, those with later water rights get shut off. And most of the water rights in the Magic Valley predate those of the Upper Snake River Valley. So that's the challenge that you have. Magic Valley doesn't want to hurt the Upper Snake River Valley, but they want their water that they have a right to also. So it is a challenge. It is, it is. I'm glad the state's dealing with that, and Scott Bedke's dealing with it.
It's the old adage always is water's for fighting and whiskey's for drinking, even in Eastern Idaho.
Yeah,
that's true. They don't want to hurt us, but they will if they have to. Right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you.
Right. Well, yes. Well, I mean, water right, that's the closest thing to Scripture that you'll find in the law, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
You don't mess with that.
And I didn't realize it until I got back east, and when I was studying water rights from back east, they have what's called riparian water rights. And that means if the water flows by your property, you have a right to it, because they're trying to get rid of water. They have so much back there.
Oh.
We're trying to save water.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And the other issue that's hurting agriculture that we've got to solve, and we've been working on it for, I think, ever since I came to Congress, but seriously working on it for the last 5 or 6 years, and that's immigration reform. We talk about what's happening in Minnesota, and that's a tragedy what's happening there. It's a self-imposed tragedy that's happening up there. But the number one issue when I talk to farmers across this country is we've got to have a legal workforce. And right now there are so many people working in agriculture that are undocumented, that have been working there for 10, 15, 20 years. How do you make them legal? And we had a group of about 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats came together several years ago before the pandemic and wrote the Ag Immigration Reform legislation. It's an H-2A reform, the H-2A visa reform bill, more than anything else. And we passed it in the House. Couldn't get it through the Senate. We almost did. If we'd have had another week, I think we might have got it done. And then we passed it the next year through the House again. Couldn't get it through the Senate. And then when what happened over the last 4 years with the Biden administration and the open border, it just became toxic to say anything about immigration. So there was no chance we were going to pass it. We think we've got the best chance to pass something right now to reform the ag immigration program because Trump has sealed the border. So that's not an issue. I think what's happening in Minnesota is not helping, but it's still we've got to get this done. And I think there's a number of people that are willing to work on it. And I've been working on it for 5 or 6 years, and I'm going to get it done before I die.
Yeah, well, this is a very, very tough issue, as I'm sure you're both aware, because I think Americans are law-abiding. And if somebody breaks our immigration laws, I think there's a general feeling that there needs to be a consequence for that.
Yep.
You just can't look the other way and honor the law at the same time. So how do you navigate that pathway where we don't just say, we don't care that they broke the law, But at the same time, you don't disrupt one of the most important industries that we have in this country, which is our food, what we eat. We want to make sure that the food is harvested, that it's cultivated, that all the things happen the way they should. So how do you balance that on this issue?
That's an extremely important question, and it's one of the things we've dealt with. And you can't just take, as an example, take a guy that works on a dairy farm in Magic Valley, and he's been here working for 10, 15, 20 years. You can't just say, okay, you're free, you've been here long enough. You have to do what we call the background check. They got to come out of the woodwork. You do a background check on them, make sure they don't have a criminal record, that they haven't been picked up for DUIs and all this kind of stuff, And then there's a penalty. You pay a fine. It's not a large fine, but it's a fine for breaking the law when they came in 15 or 20 years ago. And then in our proposal, you give them a permanent green card so that they can come and go. If they're from Mexico, say, or Honduras, and their mother dies, they can go home to the funeral and come back to their job. It doesn't grant them citizenship or anything else like that. There is a path that they can become citizens, but it's the normal path everybody else that wants to apply for citizenship. They don't get to jump to the front of the line or anything like that. So that's the penalty that we kind of came up with when we were writing this bill.
Yeah. What's the Farm Bureau's view of this?
So we appreciate the Congressman because, as you said, it's hard. And when you go to Farm Bureau's got county meetings throughout the state, and it's pretty hard to find a less patriotic group than farmers.
Sure.
So law-abiding, we get that. But as the Congressman said, if you look in Idaho right now, you don't want to be too over the top, but our prices are as bad as they've been in probably 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're just talked about water. And as the Congressman said, you talk to farmers, the first thing they'll say is, I've got trouble with labor. So a few stats, which everybody loves stats, which they really don't.
Yeah.
But H-2A that the Congressman talked about is the only resource that a farmer has to bring in a worker, foreign born. But dairy, greenhouse, and mushroom farmers, for some reason, among a few, are excluded from being able to access that program. So when he talks about those types of groups, there's no recourse. There's nowhere else to go. Another study just came out from the nation. Last year, there was applications for 398,000 workers for H-2A workers. One of the requirements of H-2A is you can't allow a foreign worker to jump ahead of a domestic worker. So if I'm a farmer, I'm growing potatoes. Potato farmers use H-2A all the time. If I put that out and I need to bring in 30 workers and someone from Shelley says, I want to come work, they automatically come to the front of the line. They have the opportunity to work. Nationwide, out of that 398,000 workers, 182 actually became placed and worked. So if you do the math, that's not 4%. That's .004.
That's not 182,000. That's 182.
Yeah, 0.004% of Americans are actually willing to take on those jobs. And when we talk about minimum wage, you're talking triple the minimum wage. These are not low-paying jobs. These are just jobs that are not being filled. So I went on a diatribe here, but yeah, we're all on board. We've got to figure out a way. These law-abiding people in rural theft, rural law enforcement is really challenging.
Yeah.
So you want to have a group of people in your rural communities that you can rely on that are trustworthy. You bring the criminals in, that's not good for anybody because that stretches your law enforcement even more into an area that we don't benefit from anything but law-abiding people, but we've got to find that solution.
So, if H-2A, excluding just coming across the border illegally, if you're a criminal, you're not eligible. Is that right? Like
that's right.
You can't be a violent person. You can't be
that's
someone
right.
who. So they're. There's
already a safeguard.
Yeah, that's already.
But
in place.
the interesting thing is the reason, like as an example, dairy can't use H-2A is because that's for seasonal workers.
Mm-hmm.
H-2A is seasonal.
Yeah.
And cows don't take December off. They have to milk them all the time. So that's year round. So the year round agricultural programs can't use H-2A essentially.
So is there a willingness to add those and change it from seasonal to regular, or what's the danger in doing so?
I think that will be part of the overall program. There's a thing called, and there's other things we're trying to address. There's a thing called AWAR, which is the adverse effect.
Adverse wage effective rate.
Yeah. It's so that you have to pay them a certain level. And they do the Department of Labor does a survey. I question their surveys in some things, but it is a substantial wage that they have to pay, and they have to pay these workers that wage.
Plus housing, plus transportation.
Yeah, plus transportation and housing.
Okay.
So, I mean, the cost is expensive to a farmer to bring one of these H-2As in.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to do is reform the AWAR rate and how it's determined and stuff. Let the Department of Agriculture be involved in making those wage surveys and that type of thing. And in fact, in our bill, and farm labor groups, we had in our negotiations, we had both producers and we had farm labor groups. Farm labor groups agreed to freeze the AWAR rate for a year and to allow it to increase no more than, I think it was 3.75% a year, just 3.75%. In some states, Idaho's has gone up 14% in a year, and other states have gone 17%, I've seen. So, I mean, it's been substantial. They realize that's a problem. So we're going to bring it down to 3.75, and for the first time ever, if the wage rate goes down, you can lower the wage rate. So it's a good bill overall. There are some things from the bills that we've introduced in the past that will probably be changed a little bit because over a 5-year period, things change. And we've got to work with the agricultural industry and with the labor groups to try to get them done. But I think more and more people, what is the poll that was just done by Boise State, Zach?
So Boise State just did a poll, 1,000 Idaho citizens, and one of the questions was how does Idaho citizens feel about immigrant workers or undocumented workers, and it was specifically for the dairy industry. But 85% supported what the congressman is laying out of they pay the fine, they get in line, no free pass, no advantage, but get them here, taking care of them. Of the Republicans, 79% were in support of that. So we know that, as you mentioned, Neal, I mean, Idaho, second to South Dakota, there's no state more dependent on agriculture for their gross GDP than Idaho. So as Idaho agriculture goes, the whole state goes, and I think that our citizens get that.
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, you always have sort of the hard right, you know, they're like deport everybody.
Yeah.
But I think most people are like, okay, if they're here and they're decent people and they're hardworking and we need their labor.
Yep.
And they need that job, then let's find a path forward and something that satisfies the law, but also, you know, fills people's needs. I think most people are saying, let's figure that out. Question that I had, and we do have to take a break here in just a moment, but I feel like the immigration issue in America has been so overshadowed by kind of these urban areas that are sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, and kind of the inner city urban crime issue. And that's taken up so much oxygen that even the Trump administration is having a hard time solving sort of these other immigration problems like agriculture in states like Idaho. And that's probably difficult to just get enough bandwidth to the issue to get a solution.
Yeah. I brought this up with the Ag Immigration Reform Bill with Secretary Rollins from the Department of Agriculture last week when I met with her on sugar issues. But I said, we got to get this bill done. And she said, yes, we do. And then I said, we need to get it done this year. And she said, it's kind of like, well, we'd like to. But and I think Trump realizes this also. Did you know that this sounds kind of partisan, and it is, 93% of the agricultural acres in this country are represented by a Republican representative?
That... You know what? That's
stunning to me.
It is stunning, but I now that you say
sense.
it makes sense.
Yeah. So this is Trump's base.
Yeah.
And he realizes, and Trump is supportive of trying to solve this problem. What the final solution is going to be, and I'm sure there's going to be changes and discussions as we get going. We've reintroduced the bill in the House. We need to get it reintroduced in the Senate, and we're working on who we want to carry it over in the Senate and get it pushing. But I really think this is the year to get it done, because who knows how the elections are going to turn out and then what happens.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. All right. It's 9:45. We'll take a break and come back real quick and continue our discussion with Congressman Mike Simpson and the Farm Bureau Federation's Zak Miller after this. All right, 9:51 on News Talk 1079. We're going to cut the congressman loose here along with Zak Miller. So final segment here for a couple of minutes. Where are you off to next, Congressman?
We're headed over to Boise. We've got some functions over there. Tomorrow we're going to do a panel at a luncheon on ag immigration and stuff, and we'll have the head of the Dairymen's Association, with us there also. So
okay,
we're just we wanted to start this discussion and stuff, and to have the people of Idaho understand what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. Mm-hmm. Because you're right, as you said earlier, there's always going to be those people that say, no, deport everybody. Well, that's not going to work. Majority of Idahoans, I was pleased to see in this poll, understand that we've got to do something about this.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it work.
For sure.
And I think I'd be remiss, Neal and Julie, that our dairyman friends that don't get to use this H-2A program. Now, bear in mind, H-2A program was built in 1986, so think of the 1986 version of the vehicles on the road that's had no updates.
Yeah.
That's the system we're working with. So in ag, we love to cuss and complain about H-2A, and the dairyman will look at you and say, just imagine us. You hate that program, you've complained about that program, and we're dying to use that program. So back to the seasonal, they'd love to use it. They want to use it. They just statutorily aren't allowed to.
Why is that so hard to fix?
It just is. Don't ask me why.
That is not an answer.
That's not an answer.
This guy.
I know that's not an answer, but there's a lot of things that make sense that I shake my head at, going, how can this be? How can it be hard to fix? But it is hard.
Congressman Simpson is saying, have you seen my peers?
Yeah, that's right.
True.
Yeah. Have you talked to Ilhan Omar?
I'll go back to your comments about Tim Walz earlier. You got others like that.
Yeah,
so.
there are a few.
All right. Congressman Simpson, thank you. Zak Miller from the Farm Bureau Federation, thank you.
Thank you, Neal and Julie. We appreciate you being here and taking on the issue.
All right, 9:53. We'll be back, and we'll wrap up the hour after this on News Talk 107.9. All right, at 9:58 on News Talk 107.9. Wow, that was close, Julie. I came in right under the wire.
It's like the garage door was closing and he slid underneath.
Well, we always okay, I drank about a 44-ounce soda like an hour ago, and we're in studio all hour long with the congressman, and I'm like, I gotta step away.
I can't hold it any longer.
Anyway, we're back here. And by the way, you can join Julie and me for the post show. We'll be taking your questions. Mm-hmm. A lot of texts. And
tons of texts.
Yeah, no, we appreciate all of your participation during the congressman's interview.
Look, this conversation of labor on farms, it's nuanced, complicated, and there is no all-inclusive win.
You're right. Nobody's going to be fully excited, or everybody's going to be disappointed a little bit. So, all right, have a wonderful Wednesday. Julie and I back here tomorrow on News Talk 107.9. It is 9:59. Clay and Buck are up next.